Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's episode of the Players NIL podcast. I have a special guest today that I think you'll enjoy her story and her current work and her passion and her enthusiasm for athletes and for athletic families. I want to welcome Margot, to the podcast, Bischow. And Margot, thank you very much for being with us today.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, I knew I was going to get that name wrong. I just told you that, but
It's not easy.
Yeah. So, we love to have people come onto the podcast. Our story is that, sports is an amazing way to benefit people, that people can use sports to improve their lives, to better their lives, and use sports to better the lives of the people around them. That's kind of our mission statement. And so to set the table before we get into some of that, I just want to ask you a little bit about your background. And I use two words, right? Sports and athletics. Sports is the fandom part, athletics would be the participation part. And not everyone has both. Some people are, tremendous sports fans, but we're not athletes. But you certainly have athletes in your family, which we'll talk about. But tell us about your childhood and some of your early memories being exposed to sports, what they were, who you were with, and what you noticed.
Honestly, my sports history is not very interesting. I'm not particularly athletic. I've always loved skiing and walking and biking. I did a few organized sports in school, but it never was much for me. It never occurred to me that I would raise two athletes.
It's funny how that works. You get pulled in. So then we'll transfer the question to your parenting. So tell me about your boys and what sports did they play when they were young, and when did you realize that they had a potential to use sports to better their lives?
So both boys were just super athletic, super energetic. They played every sport when they were young, as I think most kids do. They played soccer and basketball and little league and everything. And so my older son, Elliot, I think he was like 10, 11, and we were casting about for a 2-week gap in our summer, and there was a half-day tennis program, and I said, okay, you're going to do this. And at the end, he said, gee, I sure would like to keep lessons up maybe during the year. And I said, okay, whatever. And at that summer, he said, I really would like to go to a tennis camp this summer. I said, oh, okay. And that was it. I mean, and he was playing tennis, basically 4 hours a day, 7 days a week for the next 20 years. He was just obsessed, and we don't play tennis. He started out losing every match because by the time you're 13, every other, all the top kids in the country are already playing tournaments, regional, national tournaments. And he just kept losing, and he just kept saying, I know what I did wrong. I'll beat him next time. And he fought his way up to 35 in the country and played in college at University of Wisconsin. And honestly, we'd be like the only parents who'd go to these national tennis tournaments who didn't know the rules,
But you learned quickly, I'm sure.
I learned most of them. But I also realized, and it wasn't until much later, sort of looking back, I realized how wonderful it was that he wasn't doing something that we loved, that we knew about, that we could advise him on. He had to choose who to train with. He had to choose what racket to play with. He had to choose what tournaments to enter. And it really empowered him. And he really grew and learned from this, not just from the tennis, where he learned grit and focus and, became just really diligent, hard worker, but he also, became very responsible.
Right. So that brings me to my next question. During our prep conversation, you passionately described why you believe sports is a great way for families to grow and kids to grow. During this process, you weren't an athlete, you weren't really even a big sports fan, but now all of a sudden, organically, your son is committed. He's playing 4 hours a day, he's playing year round, he finds his passion. He's probably pulling you along rather than you pushing him, which is the best way to do it. But why do you believe that sports is such a great way for families to get along?
I mean, there's so many reasons. First of all, he wasn't going out drinking Friday nights in high school. He was going to bed early because he had a tournament the next day. When he was in college, he wasn't going out drinking every night. He had a team that he had to report to practice every day.
Yeah.
My younger son also played D1 sports. He was at the University of Colorado on the football team. He was a backup quarterback. Sports, he loved sports. He loved being active. He loved playing. He loved that whole experience. It wasn't his passion. His number one passion was writing music. But he saw what a wonderful experience it was for his older brother to be in a D1 sports program in college, and he wanted that same thing. So he actually ended up, being happy to be sort of a second string long snapper in a D1 program, as opposed to sort of a, maybe a running back in a D3 program, because he just wanted that experience. And we mentioned this the other day that, high school kids in America, they're so looked after, and all their time is organized. People know, their parents know what they're doing every single minute, and then they get to college and no one has any idea about what's going on with their life. No one knows if they're going to class. No one knows if they're struggling emotionally or mentally. No one knows if they're drinking every night. No one knows anything. Not if you're a D1 athlete, boy. You're a D1 athlete. There is someone who's watching you who says, hey, you didn't do so well on that grade. Hey, I heard you didn't go to that class. You got to be there every single day. My younger son, the first day of football practice, he had to be there at 6 a.m. and he got there at 6:01. And the coach said, once is a mistake, twice is a behavior, don't do it again. And this is a kid for 4 years. I'd screamed at him to get him to go, to get going in the morning, and he was never late again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the best. And
Yeah.
he turned 21, and someone said to him, hey, you're 21, will you go buy me liquor? And he said, the coach says nothing good can ever come from going to a liquor store. And it's just like, to have this, it's just what every parent should want when their kid goes through college.
Right.
I can't say enough good things about it.
Good. I love it. So you have this experience as a mom, as a family. You're chasing tennis tournaments and football games all around the country, which is an amazing experience. You meet great people. Then it ends, right? It ends for everyone. And so you're a writer, and you recently wrote a book about entrepreneurs and the connection to athletics. So tell me a little bit about your research and what you learned in preparing this book.
Sure. So here it is. It's called Raising an Entrepreneur, How to Help Your Children Achieve Their Dreams. And I was just so interested in how some kids ended up becoming entrepreneurs and what it was about the way they were raised. And I started interviewing people. And to my amazement, not all of them, but maybe 40% of them played sports at a serious level growing up. And it almost got to be embarrassing to me. I mean, I didn't want to write a book saying you have to be an athlete to become an entrepreneur, but I talked to these people, and then at the end of the conversation, I'd be, by the way, did you play sports growing up? And, then like Simon Isaacs told me, oh yes, I was on the Olympic development team for skiing. And Elizabeth Gore told me, oh yes, I was the national equestrian champion. And Adam Braun told me, oh yeah, I played basketball at Brown. And Radha Agarwal said, oh yeah, I played soccer all through 4 years at Cornell. And Blake Mikowski said, oh yes, I went to, college to play tennis. And I mean, on and on and on and on and on. And none of these people do anything in sports today. And every one of them says it's what they learned by playing sports at that level that made them an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I'm guessing that the connection is, some of the obvious, which is, discipline and structure. But I think, what I believe that athletics can do, and we know that it can come from a variety of sources. Could be music, it could be art, could be science, could be, different passions. But sports in particular seems to give people confidence. And so if you have that gene, that entrepreneur gene, which probably you're born with to some degree, and possibly you were encouraged and raised to be, then the sports aspect gives you some confidence, I assume, and fighting through adversity and, accepting failure, right? Because every one of us has lost a game at some point. No one goes undefeated.
Lost a game.
Right. Right. It's part of it. So you write this book and you find this, amazing connection. And what have been people's reaction? What have been the comments? What has been, you've talked to people about the book. What is the feedback that you've gotten?
I think a lot of people are sort of surprised. It's just not, if you don't have that in your own background, you just wouldn't know that that's how so many super successful entrepreneurs, what they credit their success to. You mentioned failure. I mean, I think one of the main differences between entrepreneurs and the rest of the world is entrepreneurs don't fear failure. They view failure as part of the learning experience. They view failure as how they, figure stuff out. And you can't become an entrepreneur if you're afraid to fail, if you're afraid to take risks. I've always loved Billie Jean King's quote, "We don't call it failure, we call it feedback." And that's how, that when you're playing whatever sport it is, whether it's soccer, football, baseball, basketball, tennis, whatever, you make a mistake, you're not winning, you're like, what can I do differently? How can I change my game? What should I, how can I improve? What should I change? And that's the attitude you have to have when you go into business. Nobody comes up with an idea for a product or a service that's perfect the first time, right? Nobody. It's, it's not just your vague idea that this might be good. It's, you put it out there and you see what the reaction is, and then you modify something, and then you see what that reaction is, and then you modify something else. And this is what they learned through sports.
Yeah. What's the next book? Do you have one planned?
No.
That's enough?
No, I think I'm good for a while here.
There's a famous expression that goes along with a famous quote, and it's the expression is, from that famous philosopher, the boxer, Mike Tyson. He once said, and the quote is, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face." Right. And as an entrepreneur myself in launching the Players NIL, I believe that, while the not afraid to fail is certainly true, and the confidence is certainly true. To me, it's the belief. I passionately believe that what I'm doing is meaningful. Doesn't mean it's going to translate to X number of dollars of success or sales, but I do believe that it's transformative in the space that we're in, which is name, image, and likeness for college athletes and evolving into high school athletes. And so my confidence in what I'm doing is an all-time high. And so, as in July 2021, name, image, and likeness was approved. And we started this Wild West craziness. Maybe your oldest son was more focused on sports, not as focused on his passion. Your younger son sounds like he might have had a split passion with music, and maybe would have been able to benefit or take advantage of name, image, and likeness. So, if you're a student athlete today, if you have this entrepreneurial spirit, with all of your parenting advice, with your research on the book, and just your experience of being an adult, give us some sound bites. What would be your advice to young athletes today about chasing their passion, chasing their dream, using name, image, and likeness to get there?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, my younger son, who's the musician, he writes songs, and he'd written like 300 songs before he graduated from high school. And in college, he wanted to put out a CD, and because he was on the football team, he had this huge sort of argument with the NCAA, and finally he had to put it out under a different name. He couldn't have anything, even on the cover or his name or anything that could refer back to, the University of Colorado. And I just think that's, even for him, it would have been so great to be able to build his, have his image there, start to create that brand that he could then use going forward. And they prevented him from doing that for the whole 4 years he was in college. And that's just crazy. And I guess the message I want to give to parents is, you should be so enthusiastic that your child is doing sports at an elite level, because it will help them whatever they end up doing in life. And most of them will not become professional athletes. And if they do, it'll just be for a few years. I mean, almost no one is a professional athlete more than 10 years. And that would be sort of an outlier. And so they want to prepare themselves for the future, and starting to build their image, starting to build their brand when they're teenagers can only help them going forward. And I want to let parents know it's not, they shouldn't worry that their kids spending so much time pouring themselves into a sport that they love, because it's going to help them as they go forward in life.
Yeah, there's a lot worse journeys down the road, right? Sports is a good one. Well, you've been a great guest, and again, hold up the book and tell our audience where they can find it, please.
Well, at the moment it's sold out on Amazon, but with any luck at all, they'll get more copies in. And it's called Raising an Entrepreneur: How to Help Your Children Achieve Their Dreams, 99 Stories from Families Who Did.
I love it. It's awesome. You've been a great guest. I love your passion. Congratulations on your family success. And I'm sure that your boys are very fortunate to have you, and I'm sure that they appreciate it. And I hope that parents take your advice and use sports to better their lives and better the lives of the family and people around them. And I hope that they use NIL to do that. And I think, maybe that'll be your next book, is Success Stories from NIL. There you go. There's your new title. And we can work on it together, because we'll have some kids that take my class and succeed, and you can document it, and we'll write a book together.
Well, I love what you're doing. I think you're really helping kids, and I hope parents really embrace this opportunity for their kids as they're going through high school and college.
Awesome. Margot, thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.